In this episode, Bart and I talk about Richard Dawkins' Eugenics tweet. And also, if and how one should rank universities. And because the episode concludes the second year of this podcast, we also talk about our plans for year 3. To tackle the global crises of the 21st century, humanity needs scientific evidence and expert opinions, and an academia that is able to provide both in high quality. This is why we feature science communicators, inform about science that impacts society as a whole, and discuss research and publication practices, academia as a workplace, and science careers. Thanks to our patrons who are supporting us with their monthly pledges. I'm your host Dennis Eckmeyer, my co-host is Bart Gerten, and this is episode 42 of Science for Societal Progress. Hey Bart, how you doing?
Hey Dennis, at the moment I'm pretty tired. And teaching starts soon again, but maybe we are lucky we handed in a revision to a major paper of ours, together with the Fiala Lab here in Göttingen. And maybe we are lucky and we can publish this.
Nice. But this is the revision, so was it like, here are some minor revisions, or was it, if you don't change the whole paper, we are not interested?
It's a high-profile journal, and the revision process was rather constructive. Mm-hmm. And they asked for 2 major controls. This was a fair revision, and I think we fulfilled it, and now we are waiting on the final decision. Mm-hmm. And then we can pop the champagne.
Nice.
And on Thursday, I had a brilliant meeting with Sven Bradler, who is an expert on stick insects, and we are going to do a project with a new bachelor student and could finally combine our expertise. He's a morphologist and evolutionary scientist, and I'm kind of a behavior guy, and so we can finally start a new project on that. The best parts about projects are starting new ones, not finishing old ones.
I completely agree. That was always the most interesting part.
But you're still full of dreams.
As soon as you see where it's heading regarding the results, it becomes less interesting.
Absolutely.
and more of a hassle because, now I have to get the data in.
But when it's still in the concept phase, it's gorgeous.
Oh, yeah, that's the best phase. Okay, so let's not talk too much about stick insects.
Yeah, talking... Oh, here comes a brilliant segue. Talking about sticky situations. I saw a huge hassle about Dawkins, the evolutionary scientist, and eugenics. And quite often when I read something that basically looks like uproar on Twitter, I try to avoid it for a quite long time because I don't get much information out of it. Mm-hmm. But somehow I still got nosy and read the original posting of his, and then I tried to figure out what eugenics is. And I found out that I had a kind of weird idea about eugenics. Mm-hmm. Eugenics in my head was basically a mixture of phrenology, which is some pseudoscience concerning heads of humans, classical genetics by Mendel, mixed in with awful Nazi ideology about like races and humans. There was no real definition of that. Mm-hmm. So I got really confused by the argument. What I found really complicated on Twitter is his answer to that, which is like, but basic genetics work. And I kind of have to agree with that. Basic genetics always works. So what's your take on that? What's the difference between his apologetic argumentation and the real eugenics argument?
So, first of all, I think the real problem is his first tweet on that, which was kind of provocative because he said that we should reject eugenics because of social and ethical reasons, but that it would work. It would work in horses and pigs and chickens. I don't know exactly which animals he was talking about there. And the thing is that if you talk about eugenics, you talk about a social issue and you talk about government overreach. Whereas when you talk about those animals, you talk about breeding in farms. And these are 2 different things to begin with. So if he would have said, yes, eugenics is terrible, in principle, breeding works, it wouldn't have been as ambiguous which one he meant in the end when he said, oh, it works. You had to, figure that out from context because he started talking about animals and domesticated animals and plants.
Maybe you can help me here. So eugenics is not just mental genetics with humans.
In a way, it is. The problem is that eugenics is it's like the government taking these ideas about genetics and Mendelian inheritance, as well as the idea of artificial breeding, and apply it to human populations with force. So government decides we want our people to be healthier genetically, and they decide what healthier means, and they decide who is allowed to procreate and who isn't, and they enforce that with not just laws, but also by forceful sterilization of women.
Okay.
And that's what happened in several countries, and it's not just a Nazi thing. It actually happened for quite a while in the United States and in other countries. Australia, I think, Canada.
So the difference is in the state program that actually is some absurd form of social politics in which I try to breed a super race. And the part that might work, even so might is in air quotations here, is the Mendel genetics.
Right.
Some people also argued that Mendel genetics doesn't work with humans.
Yes. So, and it actually also doesn't work well with animals either. So the problem that we have with a lot of our domesticated breeds is that they have problems, for example, with the immune system. That's a big problem in crop production, for example. I just had an interview that's coming up, by the way, soon. And we talked about genetics in crops and using gene editing in crops. And one of the big problems why we need so much pesticides in conventional farming these days is that these highly bred crops that we use that are super productive and they produce the fruit that we want through this artificial selection process, they picked up a lot of genetic deficiencies. So if you start doing that with humans, you will get the same problem. Inbreeding in humans is not good. And in order to make a certain trait more prevalent in a population, inbreeding is basically what you have to do.
So what do we take out of this incident for scientific Twitter? First of all, seemingly you can't be flippant with eugenics.
Nope.
But I think everybody knew that before, or maybe
well, apparently Dawkins didn't.
But I think one of the problems is how to present your scientific opinion then on Twitter. Quite often, scientific opinion flies in the face of beliefs of other people.
Right.
So, what do you think is the best way to at least reach a feasible number of people? Talk about real science and not getting into the center of a so-called shitstorm?
Well, first of all, don't make provocative statements like that.
But Twitter is a provocative medium, isn't it? I mean, it's made to make flippant statements.
Yeah, in a way. But I mean, then you would need to deal with a shitstorm, right? If you're deliberately provocative because you think, oh, this is how Twitter works, then you will have to deal with the outcome.
Now, okay, maybe not provocative. I agree on that. But at least you have to be very concise in a form that actually threatens to be inaccurate in science.
Yeah. I mean, in this particular case, I think that it would have been possible to write a tweet that makes a clear distinction between talking about eugenics and talking about basic genetics. The thing is that then that then the tweet wouldn't have made sense, because what he wanted to do is be like, oh yeah, there are always two sides to a thing, and just because it's unethical, it doesn't mean that the science doesn't work. So it turns out that a lot of geneticists say, no, the science also doesn't work. And also, I mean, that's not the right response to such an issue.
What could you come up with an example for something where it's unethical but the science works? Atom bombs.
Atom bombs, yeah, they work, but using them is unethical. That's true.
Fair enough. So one can literally make that up in 5 seconds. Okay. But if you now would have to, or if you want to publish something that is really flying in the face of the beliefs of many people, how would you go about it? Would you even consider Twitter as a medium for that?
I don't know. This is really a tricky question for me. I don't know. I think I need a specific example.
Let's say we two came up with a new abortion technique.
Right.
That is less painful, really quick, and you can do it really easy.
Yeah. I would tweet that. Yeah. But
would it reach the people that you wanted to reach? I guess so. Yeah.
So that's the thing. Because I would not
deal
go
with it on your personal account, like with the fallout of like hundreds of pro-life activists going, "You are a murderer."
So in this case, I would not go on Twitter and say, "Oh yes, abortion is totally unethical, but it works." I mean, what would that be? That doesn't make sense to me. So I would not do that to begin with. And then what would I do? I mean, I would say, I think abortions can make sense. I don't think that women aren't able to make ethical decisions about it. And if they want to abort, it's usually for some very serious reasons. So here's a method with which you can do it. And it's less invasive or whatever. So I don't think I would hide that. And I'm not afraid of pro-lifers. Maybe that's a mistake.
I have to say that if we would be like the scientists behind it and we would have to come out with a statement to that, for example, I would be less easy with that on my personal account, because it would also reflect on my children, or on maybe even on the safety of my children.
I'm not a family man, as you know. I don't have people that depend on me, so maybe I'm just lacking this view, this perspective.
Yeah, but at least now we have a media campaign for our new abortion products.
You know which episode this is?
It's the one where I get a present, I guess.
So you did not forget. So this is the official end of the second year episode. So we are having an anniversary again. And Bart starts talking about presents again. You know I'm still not rich. I do not have presents for you.
When we first met on this project, you were still recording in your kitchen. Now you're recording in the studio with true. Soundproof walls.
Yes. Yeah. Because my dad happens to have one in his basement.
Oh, do you want to pre-shadow our new episode format?
Actually, I was hoping you would do that because it was your idea.
Okay, yeah. So very often in our podcast, we came to the point where we actually would need a social scientist to help us through a few of their train of thoughts, or at least a few of their strong beliefs in their science community. So we tackled a number of really curious subjects and trying to getting into contact with professors and postdocs and PhDs to get them to explain to us why this is science. This sounds a bit like Dawkins provocacy, but I'm pretty sure they can actually shed all our doubts that this is real science and explain to us why this is actually researched and how it is researched, which is particularly interesting to me because whenever I met somebody who worked in the liberal arts or social economics or something like that, they had interesting and amazing methods to actually get their data and get their beliefs and get their research topics, but they were completely alien to me. And the more you know, I guess, we're going to try that and ask all the mean math nerd questions you can ask somebody studying, for example, fairy tales of Germany.
Or taking a walk. You've heard this science about taking walks. I still
and
want
of
to
course,
know what
my
that is
favorite
about.
one, the science about how to name things.
Oh, yes. And it's not called namology.
So, yeah, this is going to be Dennis and Bart versus humanities.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Stay tuned to get more information about that.
Yeah, so I will try to get a guest by next month when we do the next Bart and Dennis episode. And then I'll try to find some more. That's what we do with Bart and Dennis in future. For me, with the interviews, I'm trying to do a little bit more in future, but I don't want to promise too much. So I'm still in the preparation. It will continue the way as it was in terms of the interviews that I've been doing about science communication, about career, about academia, and about the big science topics. And I already have the next 3 interviews done. There's a 4th in the making, and I already have some leads for the next recording phase in summer. And then I was thinking about making a special series about climate change. As you may have heard, in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, we have Scientists for Future, which is 26,000 scientists who signed that Fridays for Future, the Greta Thunberg movement, is correct about the science that they're promoting. And I'm trying to get, for each month, one of them to talk to me about climate change and Scientists for Future. But
that sounds amazing.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for the response. I just heard that they have their own podcast now, so they might not be interested. And the third thing was that, so having 3 episodes a month is kind of weird.
Do you want to have 4?
Yes, but the 4th one will not be a new episode. I will just pick the most successful episodes, the 12 most successful episodes from the last 2 years. And then I will put the extended edition on the podcast so that people will listen to the extended edition for a change.
Well, that sounds good. What about the following idea? I'm quite often middle author, but very often I see a lot of middle authors on papers that do quite an extended part of the whole work. There might be also some middle authors who are just there for
shits and giggles.
That could be. But I always found this like the worst situation to be in. Like the German saying for that, if you need one, is bitte ist Schitte. I guess you can work that out. So the general idea would be to interview on papers of interest, which you as a listener could offer to us, or you're a middle author and one of the unsung heroes of science. We would take those papers of interest and interview the middle author on the paper. What about that?
I think that's a great idea. To the listeners, please send in your ideas.
What's the social scientific topic of this episode?
Yeah, so I saw an article being shared on Twitter about how Nature Index crowned some university. Which one was it? I don't even remember. One of those universities in the UK was the best one in the UK.
Is Nature Index a journal?
Nature Index appears to be a thing where they just rank universities. And it seems to be separate from the journals, but since it's Nature, I guess it's not completely separate.
Like, can now everybody just make up your mind and say, like, I'm going to be indexing potato chips?
Yeah, of course you can. Put up a website and rank potato chips if you like. I'm pretty sure there would be an audience for it. And that's what Nature is also thinking, apparently. And if you ask me, they're just trying to become more relevant than they are already in academia. I don't even know how long this already exists.
All right.
Maybe this is actually has been
So
around for 100 years or something. I don't know.
Do I have to pay to know who's the big dogs in my vicinity?
No, you can just go to natureindex.com and look it up, I think. Did you encounter a paywall at some point?
No, I'm currently looking at it, but sometimes I don't get what the business plan behind some things are. So I guess if I had a big business plan for the Girton indexing of potato chips, it might be thwarted by the reality of people are really not interested in my opinion about potato chips.
Well, apparently everybody's interested in Nature's opinion on universities.
Now, maybe I do them this favor. How do they rank universities? Some rules to that.
There are. And it's hilarious. So, as you can imagine, because it's a publisher, it's all publication-based. And what they do is because they heard that the journal impact factor doesn't really represent the quality of research, they did the next best thing, obviously. They just pick up a bunch of scientists and ask them which journals they like the most.
Oh, that's totally bias-free.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no bias from creating myths in academia about journal impacts that and doing advertisements that could bias the people who depend on publishing in these in a certain brand of journals in order to get into the positions they're in.
Also, another question is if people really decide totally objectively, if the Nature Publishing Group asks you to rank different Nature papers and other papers.
Yeah, exactly. So, and not only that, so they pick up a bunch of scientists, and they're supposed to pick a bunch of journals that are being analyzed for this. Okay, so they don't look at all the journals. They don't look at all scientific publications. They pick certain journals from Web of Science. And Web of Science is a database now run by Clarivate Analytics.
Isn't Web of Science just a dead thing that Google Scholar left behind when it came to the internet?
Pretty much. But apparently people still think it's significant.
Oh, okay.
So you have this Web of Science, which is already a pre-selection. So if you listen to the episode that I did with Björn Brems, he talks about that Web of Science are pre-selecting the journals that they're looking at. Right? So certain areas are pretty much excluded, like journals that are publishing in South America, for example. They are called local journals, which for some reason makes their science not interesting globally. It's kind of weird. And from those, these scientists are allowed to pick journals, obviously completely unbiased, which are then used for the ranking. And if you look into which journals they choose, so it's 82 journals and 18 carry the name Nature in them. So I would say that's a significantly large number. So in life sciences, they always talk about CNS if they want to point out the high impact factor journals. So that's Cell, Nature, and Science. And guess which journals are on the list? Cell, Nature, and Science. And similar papers. So Cell is also Cell Press. There are a number of different Cell publications. There are a whole lot of Nature publications. Then there's Science and other Elsevier publications, So these are the typical high journal impact factor journals, which is consistent with the finding that journal impact factor highly correlates with prestige of journals. So if you choose a bunch of scientists and ask them, so we don't use the journal impact factor, just you tell us which are great journals, then they will pick journals with high impact factors.
So on a different level, I think these answers would change drastically if you would ask them, which journals do you believe to have published in to become a permanent faculty member, which would again be the CNS papers, journals, or which papers do you find the most interesting articles for your own research in?
Right.
And then you get mostly a completely different list. Because if you would ask me, like, what's the most important papers for you, I would have the problem that I can't exclude the CNS papers from that list. Because I need them to get a permanent faculty member. I need to have published in them. This is a reality. This is not my opinion, and I think it shouldn't be that. But at the moment, I would say this is a reality for neuroscientists.
Yes.
But if I would say, like, what's the journals where I found the most papers that were of interest to me, it's very often Journal of Experimental Biology, Journal of Comparative Physiology, Frontiers, PLOS, all these bread and butter journals where actually the full story is told. Whereas, like, most often the Nature equivalent of the same paper is basically like a highlights reel of the overall story, if you know what I mean.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I like to say that Science and Nature don't really publish scientific papers the way they should be. It's like a Reader's Digest, and then they hide the information that is really important to people in the field that want to, reproduce these data or want to do something similar. They have to dig through supplementary material. And they are not really served by the text of the actual article. This is something we should explain. So there are small journals that are highly specific, like the ones that Bart was talking about, Journal of Experimental Biology and Brain and Behavior. These are journals where you find neuroethology papers and behavioral neuroscience papers, which is very specific. And often the information in there is, because it's so specific, also the most relevant to the researchers in that specific field. Whereas as we said, the larger impact factor journals are often targeted at a very broad audience. So the articles are not as specific.
Anyhow,
I would agree. If you force them to say, look, go through your literature and tell us from where the papers come that you cite in your articles, because they're the most useful ones, I think then the situation would be more even. So obviously people will cite papers from high impact factor journals, but the data suggests that most of the papers in those journals are not cited more often than the papers in other journals.
What does Nature Indexing now use to index universities and rate them?
So they have two scores. One is simply the count. So they just count how many papers were published in these specific journals, and they go for institutions and for countries. So so that's one score, and the second score is about sharing. So obviously, if you have collaborations, then you don't have a single institution in the paper. So you cannot count it just for one, so it will be counted for two different institutions. So they put in a second score that is called share. And the share indicates how collaborative the institute is.
All right.
Yeah. And then you have these two scores.
So basically, Nature developed a new quantification mechanism that is based on publication in their own journals, at least to 20% or over 20%.
Exactly.
And that makes it more important to publish in Nature.
Right. So they basically made up a new game, and if you want to score high in that game, you need to publish in those specific journals. So this is basically an incentive for universities to give incentives to publish in these journals. So I wonder how important this index is. I mean, do the listeners use Nature Index to decide which country and which college or university they want to go to work or study?
I don't know. I never looked at indexing. I know that there's also CHE.
That's a German one.
CHE is the Center for Higher Education. It's an independent non-profit institution which develops proposals for the improvement of higher education systems and simultaneously provides information for students and prospective students. So it is funded half by the Bertelsmann Foundation and half by the Hochschulrektorenkonferenz, which is basically all the deans of all universities combined. They have their own body that can also fund stuff. They consult and advise politicians on the development of higher education, and they want to provide a general idea or ranking, if you want, to students or upcoming students to choose the right university in the German language area. But I never used that to look at any university.
But what are they looking at in CHE? I mean, what's the difference to the Nature ranking system? They have not a single ranking for these things, but they have a bunch of them. So they have different criteria on which you are being ranked as an institute.
So far as I see, it's job market and career orientation is one of the modules. And in that, they assess the competitive ability to actually get a job with a diploma or bachelor's, master's from that university. And this is in different fields, like if the professors own their own engineering company, or if they have practical courses inside the industry that you're trained for, etc., something like that. Then it's quite simple equipment research stuff. What kind of facilities are there that you can use? Are there microscopes or whatever, telescopes, or in humanities, I guess, libraries and stuff like that? Then that's the research output the university has, but this is one of the modules. The international collaborations and orientation. But funnily enough, they also judge things like town and university. Does it have like a large international community? How near is it to the next airport, etc., etc., etc.? And also students and academic studies and teaching. And seemingly teaching, for whatever reason that has to do with a university, seems to be also something that is quantified.
Right.
So it looks basically much more diverse. It takes in stuff from the ability to get a job afterwards with a degree of that university up to how does the town look like surrounding the university.
Right. So it's much more practical driven, right?
I remember that it was all the rage in 2006-07 around.
All right.
Because I think
that's
maybe
when
it was
we
the first time
graduated.
Yeah. Because I remember that I was sitting in the Mensa talking to the postdocs and professors, and they were all about like on which position in the CHE rating the university is at the moment. But I never used that to look at any of the universities.
Well, I don't think when I decided which university to go to, where to start my undergrad, basically, we had this. I think there was some sort of ranking. I don't remember. I mean, it's 20 years now. 21 years, actually. So 21 years ago, I started at university. But I did think about where I want to go, and I had some idea of where biology is interesting and where not so much. I don't remember exactly how I knew that. I think we got printed books where there were universities and it was listed what kind of subjects they teach.
I just checked the nicest party locations. No, I'm not kidding. I
That's
went
how
to
you
Cologne.
ended up in Cologne.
Yeah, it was my first choice. But maybe that's the difference.
So there's a central agency that distributes students to the public universities.
And that's one of the major differences, I think, between, for example, the American system. I would say that all universities are of the same quality in Germany.
There is excellence clusters and
but
special
in reality, like,
research things that get extra funding, right? And they're...
Yeah, but in reality, that doesn't change anything for the student.
That's true, yeah. For the students, it's pretty much the
It's
same.
more like a postdoc, maybe PhD thingy. But if you're already at the position of a PhD, like the number of labs that are interesting to you shrink down to maximum 20. It's not dependent anymore on the university, but dependent on the lab where you want to go.
Right.
So I guess in Germany, indexing of universities just isn't a thing at the moment. Maybe this changes if we really have qualitatively different universities. But I would hope that we don't go down that road.
Well, we do the ranking, right? The CHE thing is a ranking system. It's based on asking students and professors about how much they like it there and how much they like different aspects.
But I think it's more tailored to people from outside Germany looking inside this thing. We could ask people how many use any kind of ranking system.
Right.
I would say like the central message of this is nature indexing is laughable as an indexing tool.
Right.
In comparison to CHE, which has a much broader idea about how to rank a university, especially also in the aspects that are important to a student. Like, can I afford the rent? Can I actually live in a student dorm, etc., which is not at all part of that.
This is the thing. So what CHE does is to provide different scores for different things. So they keep it all separate and they don't, just look at a couple of publications and say, oh, look, these are very great because they got us the most money, basically. So I understand that universities want to have a measure of their quality and of how well they're doing, so a ranking does work in that regard. You just need to be careful about which one you actually pay attention to and which one you find is important for your goals.
The ranking creates the situation in which some politician will go there and say, like, we have another 15 million euros to spend on science. Let's give it to the number one university in Germany.
Right.
The English idiom for that system is money makes money.
Mm-hmm.
That would mean that the number one university gets money for being better while being better, and the university that actually would have to improve and could use the money to improve that will never get that. And one of the points here is always that for some reason in politics, there is this idea that you have to have one of these flagship universities. And I think that doesn't make too much sense in the German system. And it was also the thing that I think made the German system so efficient that it wasn't devastating to go to a small university.
Right.
And I would like to keep that. So at the end now, is ranking a positive or not a positive thing?
I think it depends how it's ranked and what you use it for.
But if it ultimately is used to allocate funds, which it often is, in reality, is it useful?
Well, that's
Dear listener, answer that.
Yeah. Maybe
More
the listener has
please.
the response because I'm a bit... I don't know. So obviously I'm as egalitarian about this as you are. So I think funds should be distributed equally. So university rankings have their pros and cons. But I hope you agree that ranking universities by their publications and only the publications in a biased subset of journals, is the most irrelevant of metrics. Don't forget to send us your suggestions for interview guests who recently published a paper on a topic relevant to our podcast to info@scienceforprogress.eu. You can also nominate yourself, by the way. Before you switch off, Dawkins demonstrated that you cannot separate a term like eugenics from its fascist ideology, the wish to label people as less valuable, to dehumanize them, and to forcefully remove them from a society. Eugenics is one of the examples in history where science was abused to legitimize an inhumane ideology and horrific practices. And it does not work. I believe that science is how we can continue to improve society and save the planet. But we must learn from history, stay critical, and ethical. I thank you very much for listening. Have a good day. Bye-bye.